Okay, everybody, welcome back. Now we're getting into a new type of VPN. As we can read here, remote access VPN. Before we start getting into it too deep, this type of remote access VPN is actually available with IPsec, or technically in the book, what is referred to as an SSL VPN, sometimes referred to as a web VPN. But more specifically, if you want to geek out, and we're going to show you a slide on this coming up in a moment, officially a TLS or DTLS VPN. So all I want to start off with here before we start getting into all the details is we're going to go over IPsec remote access VPN and then a TLS or more specifically DTLS remote access VPN. So with that, let's just get right onto it. First thing we got to understand is, again, the benefits. As you've heard me say before, always want to start with a why do you care about something? And folks, it is the absolute explosion, especially over the last few years, and we do not see an end in sight of the mobile users, mobile workers, and the various different kinds of devices that the users are using. Everything again from a laptop, a tablet, what they referred to as a phablet. The incredible number of devices that are being introduced into the workforce and the desire to keep those device connections safe. I know the slide here is saying an average of 3 devices per worker. Well, I'm not the kind of person that has 2 cell phones and a laptop and a tablet. I do know people who are like that. But if you go back to my office or even my house, I know I'm contributing to the number of devices, the device to user ratio. And then last but not least, again, with how many mobile devices or user devices we have, creating a larger work surface, and then that work surface being an even larger and attractive attack surface. So for these 3 reasons, we absolutely, not only to support the mobile worker as to why we need remote access VPN, but especially because of the number of devices, the increased size of the surface, and the increased threat surface, attack surface, we want to make sure that the remote access VPN is done securely. So now we're getting high level into some of the components, and simply put, laptop, desktop, phone, tablet, phablet, as you heard me say a moment ago. By the way, I'm not making up the word phablet. That really is a word in our industry. With a specific client, the Cisco AnyConnect Secure Mobility Client. And folks, give me just a little while, give us just a few slides. We'll explain why it's called the Secure Mobility Client. And for those of you who've been doing this for quite some time, you might remember the days when it was just called Cisco AnyConnect. It did not have the Secure Mobility Client part in it. And we'll explain why that name has evolved and what it's doing to make it secure. We, of course, are trying to establish a remote access VPN into our appliance. And then folks, maybe what we're doing, especially because of the external source, the external origins of the connection, we want to authenticate in even more secure manner using a digital certificate. And maybe depending upon the kind of worker, maybe this is a third-party contractor or this is a B2B style connection, maybe you even want that certificate to come from a trusted third party, a public certificate authority server. The whole reason why I'm bringing that up is, please understand, you could use an internal CA server, and we even go over some of those options in a topic to come. Anyways, when the certificate is used, or even an option to do a pre-shared key, a pre-shared passphrase for authentication, you need some place to validate whether it be the certificate or the pre-shared key. So understand, we can use our internal user databases, for example, authenticating the username and password of the user on the device that is used to establish the remote access VPN. All right, folks, as we said, why is this client installed in our laptop, desktop, phone? You get the idea. Why is it called the Secure Mobility Client? Why is it no longer called the Cisco AnyConnect Client? And by the way, the secure mobility aspect of it was added, enhanced many years ago. Well, folks, what the Cisco AnyConnect Secure Mobility Client does, that's a mouthful, is it not only allows for secure connectivity with not only an IPsec VPN, But as we said earlier, an SSL TLS VPN, it provides as well context. For example, what kind of device are you on? Oh, you're on a laptop? Okay, what's your operating system? Ah, it's Windows 10. Well, what kinds of software do you have? Because notice this, is that OS up to date? Do you have antivirus software? Has the definition been updated recently? Do you have a personal firewall? Do you have a rule set pushed down? So this is where, in my opinion, one of the big parts of the secure mobility part comes into play. And that's the ability to do a posture assessment. So literally with AnyConnect being installed, when the PC boots up and the client loads, it's able to learn even more information about that PC. So now when the user is connecting, whether it's again over a VPN, or here's what's great, even on your wired, wireless, and cellular networks, we're able to offer security. So said another way, please don't think that the secure access is only going to be across a VPN. And as we said earlier, our secure connectivity with our 2 VPN types, and one more time, even the ability to secure or offer security for several different kinds of connections, whether it's a web-based inspection or encrypting all the communication. So one more time, why is this referred to as the secure mobility client? Let me tell you now, this is not your father's Oldsmobile. Gone are the days of only doing a VPN connection. We're doing so much more on the client itself. All right, continuing on. If you ask me, this is just a slide echoing much of what we mentioned a moment ago. So once again, reliable, transparent to the end user, and providing secure and security resources at many different levels. Offering not only a secure connection from the endpoint, but with the posture assessment endpoint integrity. Yes, this is meeting our operating system preference. Yes, the operating system is up to date. We have these certain security software installed and up to date. And then not only that, but allowing for, as soon as the user powers on the laptop and they see, let me give you an extreme example, they see the very first login prompt, unbeknownst to them, they're not only logging into the PC, but logging into and establishing a VPN tunnel. So not only is the connection secure through the tunnel, if they were to manually establish a tunnel, but the PC is secure very possibly from the very moment the user uses the endpoint. All right, as we've said hopefully a couple of times, but you know by now I really like to repeat myself, when we go over VPN for remote access, we have one of 2 options. Our classic IPsec that we've been talking about up until now, and then what a lot of documentation will call SSL, or Secure Sockets Layer VPN. Folks, the reality is, and I am so glad that this is in our slide deck, the reality is, number one, SSL has been around for a very long time. And I like how this slide is laying out a timeline for us. But the real truth, the true truth, is that we have actually been using transport layer security for a long time now. Look at how far back TLS goes. And not only that, because TLS is a TCP-based, TCP 443-based channel, communications channel, we can even use datagram TLS, which will give us the ability to establish a secure connection over UDP. Again, in those kinds of environments that might have lower bandwidth, might be on a more secure, more trusted infrastructure, so we want to have less overhead for our tunnel and tunnel establishment. So please understand, we just simply say SSL VPN, but gone are the days really of using SSL. Instead, very likely at minimum, we're doing our TLS VPN, and even more likely than that, doing datagram TLS. But give us some time. We're going to go in and configure this and review this, troubleshoot this in more detail in the topics to follow. So in case we haven't said this enough, let's go ahead and say it one more time. We support our SSL VPN. Told you the documentation uses that term a lot, even though more realistically it's datagram TLS or just TLS. But the reason why I'm glad that this slide is putting this in print for you is understand that You might be in an environment where, because the site does not allow what is becoming an overcrowded port, an overcrowded set of protocol and ports. Whoops, how do you spell UDP? Again, because the site may have already standardized on IPsec. It's got documents written, it's got certifications on that config. You may have no choice but to use IPsec VPN instead of a TLS or DTLS VPN. So the great thing here is, don't worry. We can do our Cisco AnyConnect client for both of them, or of course, the secure mobility client. Now, one of the requirements here, if you're going to do certificate-based authentication, and we'll go over this in more detail in the topics to follow, is we need to make sure that the head-in device, somewhat of a new term, the VPN endpoint where we are terminating, to which we are terminating, we need to make sure the head-in device has what is referred to as an identity certificate. And folks, I'm just going to stop there because I promise we have an entire topic coming up just into the deep details of certificate use, certificate acquisition, certificate exchange. But what is so important about this certificate is when we configure that head-in device on the AnyConnect client, it will literally challenge that head-in device saying, oh yeah, I was told I'm supposed to communicate with you, but I need you to prove your identity to me. And that's where this ID, the identity certificate, will be sent over to the AnyConnect client, and the client is able to validate that certificate. So let me pause. That does not mean that the client also has to send a certificate. But what is so nice about the head-in device using a certificate in this scenario is now we're able to, from the client, say, I'm supposed to connect to you, and sure enough, you are who you say that you are. So now I know when I establish this connection, everything else that I secure on how to protect the data is happening on a secured medium with a trusted or an authoritative endpoint, an authoritative head-in. So folks, thank you very much on listening to our high-level overview of the remote access VPN. Just keep in mind, it's coming from a client. That client is the Cisco AnyConnect Secure Mobility Client, because it does so much more than just an IPsec or TLS, DTLS VPN. It allows for us to establish an inventory of the client, and even as far as doing posture assessment to secure the client from the moment the client is powered on. And we're going to establish an IPsec or DTLS VPN connection to what is now referred to as the head-in device, which is going to be our Firepower security appliance. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on the other side of our next topic, where we'll go into VPNs even deeper.